yours
You're
as
my
well.
guinea pig too. Oh my God, we're each other's guinea pigs.
Oink,
I
oink.
love it.
Oh man. So, well, I was inspired to reach out to you because I was, thinking, God, who do I know who really could dive into some of the questions that I have going on in a way that really results in some useful like useful guidance or useful insight, because I know you have that.
Well, thank you.
So I thought it would be really fun to explore
Yeah.
some of these ideas that have been stirring around in my brain. And I know that you've got a lot of things stirring around in your brain that I would love to just pick your brain
Oh
about.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crazy shit up in there.
Yes, there is. That's why I love you. Yeah, so the way I think of this kind of process that we're doing now is just, like we were saying in email, as kind of an open forum, essentially, that's completely free and spacious and really has that energy, that quality of abundance in it. Because if we're not living in that, then we're not really pursuing what we think what we want to pursue.
It's so true. And it's no coincidence that today, we mentioned this is a Friday before a 3-day weekend. For us that don't go to work every day, it's, not as big of a deal. But there's still that vibe in the air, that, freedom of, especially on Memorial Day,
Yeah. It's like the beginning of the summer.
Yeah.
People are probably going to do stuff outdoors.
Yeah. But it's interesting how we live our lives so tied down, and then there's these moments like a Friday on a 3-day weekend or before a vacation or something where we realize, oh, this is what freedom feels like. Just imagine if we lived like that all the time.
Yeah. Of course, the first question that comes up is, how, Renee? How do we live that way all the time?
Practice.
Yeah.
And I think that shift in even knowing that this is a reality, that you can live this way.
Right.
Because we've been so brainwashed, and, from the time we're little kids going to school, and, this is how you grow up, you're a worker, you work 9 to 5 or whatever it is, and that's your life.
Yeah. There are these old kind of crusty paradigms in our culture that people just, take for granted.
Yeah.
And don't question. I think it's scary to question those things for people.
Sure it is, especially when those beliefs are so deep in there from, we don't even know, from we're little kids and we see our parents, our grandparents, everybody that we know living like that. Yeah.
And we have this disconnect, right? Because we feel like we should be like they were.
Oh, yeah.
Okay with it all. But there's this other thing, at least in me, and I know a lot of people, that's this other calling, right? It's this calling to freedom.
Yeah.
And sort of ease.
Yes.
So going out into the 100,000-mile view, right, or even the edge of the universe view, how does one little speck of a thing, being me or you, contextualize ourselves within the whole of creation?
Yeah.
In such a way that benefits us personally?
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah.
Because I think we're at that moment in our evolution, especially in our country right now. Well, and we're seeing the elections in all the European countries right now too, which is quite scary, and just Australia had a similar type thing, and where I think we're waking up. I think the brainwashing that has been done to us and how we thought we had to live is now we're realizing this is a bunch of baloney. We don't have to live like this. And so I think if we're all a speck of that collective, it doesn't change unless we change. And that's kind of that weird dynamic, that we've heard 10,000 times, that starts with you, all that stuff. But I really don't believe that change happens out there. It happens in here. And then the more of us that it happens in here, then that's when clearly the change, happens on the planet.
So, I've spent a lot of time in my life sitting on my couch, reading books, writing in my journal, thinking, even meditating,
Sure.
processing, talking to friends here and there. But I think that one of the things that has been missing for me until recently is this idea of relationship. And there's the mentor and the mentee relationship, which is what you are engaged in a lot right now.
Yeah.
And then there's just any kind of interpersonal relationship where there's generosity and love and caring and respect, and what's the significance of our connection to one another in terms of this progression towards something,
towards awakening,
Yeah.
I'll call it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're just all learning from each other. Really, if you're sitting, and I've certainly like to spend a lot of time alone too. And you can read all this stuff and you can have all the knowledge. And as you know, it's all kind of packaged in different ways, but it's the same stuff. But it doesn't do any good to know it unless you're interacting with people and using it.
Yeah.
So I think that's where, the next level is. Okay, now we know it. And there's a whole group of people that have been studying this for, 10 years, 20 years, decades. And now comes the time where we're shifting over to actually using one of this knowledge that we've been, accumulating over the last few decades.
Yeah. It's so interesting, that you say that. I do feel there's this kind of cycle that we go through of contemplation and then action.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole lot of stuff in that cycle that happens, right? And it feels, almost universally we are entering another point of real action.
Yes, it does feel like that.
Yeah.
I also think, clearly I'm not a Trump supporter, but I will say that having these extreme viewpoints, in our government and this has woken a lot of people up. And I think we needed that as a society. Clearly I needed it. I had no idea how racist our country was. No clue.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm embarrassed to say, yeah.
Yes, the darkness is coming out to the light where we can see it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Which then we can heal it.
Yeah.
Yep, and shift our views and move forward. Yeah.
So speaking of darkness and light, that's a dichotomy, right? That's a dualistic way of thinking, but just something that I, am trying to sort of steer away from more and more, because I understand that you can get caught in a trap if you start to, judge one or the other as good or bad, right?
Right.
So, is that something that you've encountered in your...
You know what? I don't even go to the dark. I look at things in the way of vibration. So if you're jealous, that's vibrating at a lower, let's just give it a number, 100. But if you're confident and want the best for people, you're vibrating higher. Mm-hmm. So it's not light and dark, it's just a higher and lower vibration.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
I'm always trying to go for the higher vibration. Mm-hmm. Because one, it feels good, and that's where I want to live. And then if you're there, you of course we know you attract, like things. So yeah.
So I know you don't want to go to the dark, but it's in my personality to do a little of that. I'm going to ask you a question you don't have to answer.
Oh, well, I'll answer anything.
Okay.
If I have an answer.
Well, I was just reading on your website about, your husband dying, and how that kind of was the catalyst to kind of an awakening for you. And, I know that you didn't mention the word grief, but it sounded like that's how you were processing your grief, was by exploring
life after death, because I didn't grow up with any religion, and I didn't even contemplate this stuff until he died. So I was maybe even an atheist before this. What even happens when you die? So here I am at age 30, with these big existential questions of what happens to us. And so I just dove right in with the information, just to get as much as I could possibly get, just to figure out. And then that's really when my life shifted. There's something bigger here. It's more than just what we see every day. There's other things, happening behind the scenes, and sometimes not behind the scenes. Yeah. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me, clearly, but it was also the best, which I think a lot of sometimes, events like that
Right.
can be both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always the silver lining, right?
Yeah, and more than a silver lining. Like, I think back to if he hadn't, I lived in California at the time, and this was, in the 90s where, the bigger house, the bigger car, the, more. And I was certainly on that path. And then him dying, just like, I'm way on this path now.
Yeah. So that, because none of that mattered anymore.
It really didn't matter. I remember he was a car guy, and our garage was like full of car parts and tools, and and I would just like nag him, like, clean up the garage. The next day after he's dead, it's like I just went in that garage just so I could be around his energy.
Yeah.
And it's like, this doesn't matter. Why was I writing him so much about stuff in the garage, Yeah.
So that's interesting because you speak of like excess possessions.
Yes.
And which is something that I've thought a lot about. I think that one of these like icky, sticky, crusty old paradigms is in Western civilization is that, you're considered to be a better person somehow or superior the more stuff you have. And one, it's pretty baffling to me just because I've never had that much stuff, so I understand the temptation. I felt that. Without judging people for shopping.
Oh, no.
Right. Like, how, I don't know. I guess in my own, mind, I have judgment. I'll admit it.
Well, if you think about, though, the millions of messages that we have heard from being little kids about buying stuff, the commercials we see, magazine,
Yeah.
It's all about the buying stuff, and they're great. These guys sell advertising, and they really know how to emotionally get to us. Another part of this, of which I've always found interesting, is the whole retirement thing. Like, you have to have so much money in retirement. Who's telling us that? The investment companies that are making money off us having money in retirement. Not that we shouldn't save for a rainy day, but, and the whole wedding ring. Like, what was the whole, like, some certain amount of 2 months salary or something like that for a wedding ring?
Yeah. It's a little arbitrary.
Great marketing.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Genius brainwashing.
Yeah, brainwashing. And so those messages are really deep, and then we go out in the world and we see it reflected back to us,
Yeah, and I feel like, the genius is that they know that they are satisfying some need within us by creating the need.
Yes.
It's like they say, oh, you need to feel loved.
Yes.
Therefore, you need to have this ring. They connect the love to the ring.
Yes.
And then they connect the diamond to the money and the salary and like that. They do the whole thing.
Yeah.
But so the work really is, once there's a level of awareness, is to go back to what is it that you really need.
Well, and the worth. So there goes that whole worth thing too. Like, if you don't have the guy or the relationship, then you don't have the ring, then you know what I mean? So therefore there must be something wrong with you. You're unworthy of some guy giving you a ring.
Yeah.
So I think underneath it is the worth of, if you're confident in yourself and you know who you are and you're loving your life, you don't need anything. Yeah. You don't need anybody to tell you, you're worthy. But I don't think we get that in our society that much.
Yeah. That innate just sense of like I'm worthy.
Like, you're worthy because you're here.
Right, that's it.
Period.
You exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I hope we're getting that.
Yeah.
Well, one thing about living in Portland is I don't feel it's as materialistic here as it is other places. So, you definitely can find people in this city that don't buy into that don't live like that. And it makes it a little bit easier here, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, because we have this gorgeous, the setting. I think that, so much of what is rich about life is nature, and if you spend enough time in it, you, at least speaking for myself, I get filled up,
I do too.
And then I don't need to shop for a new outfit. It's like, I'm totally content.
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't happen every time, but like we have a lot of that. I think that really helps, is that connection.
I think so too. And I think that we have bought into that belief that if you go buy stuff, it makes you feel better. And some people, let's be real, it does in that moment because, you know, somewhere in your brain you've equated that to worth and love and,
Right.
you know, yeah.
So you know, I feel like I'm becoming a little bit of a eco-justice warrior in a way, which is interesting because, like, you know, I know some spiritual people, you know, kind of like to speak about it, not so much in these like fighting terms, but there is a part of me that really does have like a fired up anger and energy.
Yeah.
And I don't want to deny that, because I do think that people, you know, like Martin Luther King, well, Malcolm X, you know, they use their anger for the benefit of the larger society. So
I agree.
you know, it's tricky because you don't want to like lower your vibration. So like, how can you, and maybe this is an interesting question, like how can you be in high vibration and harness your anger at the same time?
Oh, I don't think if you're angry, you're down here.
Okay.
I think anger can be used to, you know, especially let's look at the women's movement and, you know, and voting rights and, you know, all that stuff. I think if there wasn't discontent and anger about it, we'd still be living like that, you know?
Yeah.
So I think harnessed right without causing damage to other people and, you know, getting into the judgy stuff and you should stuff, and which, you know, that's when it starts to lower your vibration.
Yes.
But if you're channeling it into, I'm going out and I'm doing this and I'm making the world better. Yeah. Me.
Yes.
You know, no judging of what you're doing.
Right.
Let me be the example and let me live my life how I want to live it, you know, and how I think that we should to help the planet and all that. And then they can see how it's done and come along on the ride. I think once we start getting into that judgy, you should stuff, that's when the divisions start to happen.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then it's, you know, I think the piece that kind of baffles me sometimes that I'm struggling within is this idea that, you know, we should just accept everything as it is. And I think a lot of, like, yes, I agree with that. But you know, to me, that doesn't mean, it shouldn't mean, you know, that I shouldn't sense the injustice in the world and try to fix it, because like what is injustice.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that I should just lay down and accept it and leave it like that.
Yeah.
Right. So I just, you know, my concern, you know, sometimes with these gurus who are just like, just accept everything as it is. They say that, but then they don't say, and make it better if you know, find your purpose and go and make it better, you know. Well,
and that's what change is. So if you're just accepting, it's this weird thing, because clearly you want to be in the now and you know, experience it like that. But what if the now sucks?
Right.
You know, and so are you just gonna accept sucking? I'm not gonna accept sucking. So I think you can be in the now and appreciate it for what it is, and then also be moving towards the higher vibration of what you're creating and what you're manifesting.
It's a beautiful dance.
It is a beautiful dance, because you can't get to the new thing without being in the now.
Yeah.
You know,
so there's this like paradox.
It is a paradox, and you can't get there also unless you appreciate the now. And so therefore, with this Trump stuff, it's really difficult for me sometimes to like appreciate the fucking now. So I have to go back to that. He's here to show what's been hidden. Yeah. Because clearly the stuff has been here, you know, or it wouldn't be bubbling up how it is, even all the Me Too stuff and, you know, all of that. So I like to think of it like that. Like, thank goodness that we now know this stuff is here so that we can heal it. Yeah. If not, I know myself, I would be going down the, you know, lower vibration. Oh my God, this is so horrible. And then it's harder from that point to make change.
It's almost like we're taking on the role of alchemists.
That's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's exactly what we're doing.
And so an alchemist wouldn't look at a pile of shit and be like, ugh. They'd look at it and be like, ooh, I can make gold out of that.
Yeah,
you know, or,
that's
you know.
some compost.
Something beautiful's gonna come out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like we can move forward unless we accept and appreciate even for the yuckiness of it where we are now.
Yeah.
I know.
That takes work.
Or not.
No.
Or maybe it takes practice.
Practice. That's what I mean.
Yeah. It's funny, interesting that work is another one of those words.
Oh, it's so
Work.
loaded.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I wrote about this in my master's thesis too. I was reading it again. It's like, I mean, why? It's so sad because, like, I don't know. I feel like for me, and I don't really necessarily want to bring the Enneagram into this, but I love the Enneagram, and I'm a 4, and the thing about 4s is we can sit on our asses all day long and do nothing and just be in our heads all day long fantasizing about other realities that, and it becomes so real for us that we don't work. Like, we don't want to do the dishes, so we don't. We sit and fantasize, and so for me, my path of healing is work. It's work. And it's like purposeful work in this case. I mean, I can, like, the other work, well, actually, it's the work of, like, doing the dishes and this purposeful work. So, I think it's interesting to see it as a healing practice work.
Oh, I completely agree. I think that's where we get some of our biggest insights.
Yeah.
Is, experiencing ourselves in work, and why are we choosing to think this way, and how are we interacting with people, and at Rose City, that was like, we never talked about mortgage numbers or how much money we're making or loans we're closing. We talked about our personal growth and how are we being in our work. So one, that it attracts other people to us, and then we therefore, end result, is making more money. But bigger than that is, how do we want to be in our lives? Because there's that divide still.
Yeah.
Like, I'm this person at work, and then I come home and I'm this person.
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So, I feel like we should, like, make a list right now for whoever's watching and, like, say, how can you heal that divide?
Well, one, you have to get real with yourself. Like, are you fake at work?
Mm.
Is that just an aspect of you? And do you feel like you can't share yourself at work? You can't be all that you are, and some people, they can't if they're in a not gay friendly place, or they have different views than other people there. Then really, what are you doing working there then?
Right.
So, because maybe we have settled or maybe we have the belief of, I don't have worth unless I'm working, and then I have to, I have to have this job, or I can't eat, and then we go into the whole lack part of it. Yeah. There's so much wrapped up in this. Yeah. I know. I wish it was like a simple answer.
Yeah.
Like, you just do this and everything's okay.
Well, and if you're me, you get to the point where you can't not be yourself anymore, and then you sabotage, and then you get fired or get laid off. That's happened to me a few times.
But you know what? Your soul is like, that was,
get me out of here.
That's exactly what was happening. Your soul is like, I gotta be me.
Yeah, I cannot do law firms. Sorry.
Law firm is not you.
No, not me. I love lawyers. I have some amazing lawyer friends, and I love, like, they're amazing people.
Yeah, but it's not where you want to hang out. Yeah. And do you think that comes with age?
Which part?
The recognizing, and your soul even recognizing, like, oh, this is not you.
I mean, I think it's always there, right? It's
always there.
Me. It's my mind recognizing, seeing the soul's message. That's what there's the disconnect between the soul or the heart, and the mind. The mind is still up in that conditioned response, right? And the heart and soul is like calling and calling and calling and calling, and it feels really ucky because there's that disconnect, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as the mind gets on board with the soul, then you can.
Yeah.
But you have to, like, the practice for me has been accepting the voice of the soul and trusting it.
Trusting.
That's a practice.
That is a practice. And I think that's where most people don't buy into stuff, because that trust takes a big jump.
It does.
I mean, you really have to, trust this, because it can be scary sometimes if the voice tells you don't get on an airplane or quit your job, and your mind is like, oh my God, if I quit my job, how do I pay my mortgage next month?
Yeah.
But if we trusted and we lived more from here, oh my God, our lives would be so much better.
I love this quote I just heard, and I'm sure you've heard it before, and I've heard it a bunch of times. You know it. Like sometimes it just doesn't
Takes
click
a
in.
while. Yeah.
It's like if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
I've been really trying to. I mean, aside from the things that I'm kind of already committed to, and then like survival things like keeping the kids fed and stuff. Aside from that stuff, if it's not a hell yes.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't you want to surround like everything in your life?
Yes.
Just think how different our lives would be if everything in our life was a hell yes.
Oh my God. It'd be like one big orgasm.
Like even when you go to the closet, like everything in there is like, oh my God, I don't know what to wear because everything is fantastic versus, oh God, I don't know, this one's a little ratty. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. That's like that. Oh gosh, Marie Kondo, I love her. The whole
clean
spark
everything
joy.
out.
Yeah. She's brilliant.
She is brilliant, and which is great. That whole does it spark? That's step number one.
Exactly.
But you know what? We don't do that with our money that often.
How would you do that?
Well, you would look at each thing that you're buying. I
Yeah.
know when I downsized to the place that I live now, I had all these like random bills. Like that I just accumulate like the auto monthly thing, and next time you look, it's like 2 years later, and you're paying for something you don't remember what it was,
Yeah.
But looking at everything in your life, does this bring me joy?
Yeah.
Of what you're spending money on. So one thing that I really had to do this with was the New York Times, because it's quite expensive now to get it delivered to your house in Portland.
Yeah.
And of course it's online, but I'm old fashioned. I like the newspaper on a Sunday morning with my coffee, and I also really want to support journalism right now, because without them, we'd really be screwed.
Without good journalism.
Good journalism.
Right.
Yeah.
Honest journalism. Yeah.
So it was, but it's like $50 a month, which doesn't sound like much, but when you're Marie Kondoing your money, you're looking at this, does this bring me joy? And it brings me so much joy that was easy $50. Yeah. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean, and what that makes me think of is like my electric bill, which has been so high lately. I really need to just sit and be like, do these lights at night that I can read by bring me joy? Yeah.
Totally. Does the air conditioning,
yeah.
the heat?
Yes,
yeah.
the hot water.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then when you pay the bill,
you're like, ooh,
instead of, oh God, it's like, oh my God, I had baths, really cool hot baths, and,
yeah.
Yeah. It shifts.
It really does.
Mm-hmm.
It's that gratitude piece.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really all about those little things.
It really is.
And you can start, anybody can start by appreciating the electric bill.
Anything.
Right.
Yeah. Appreciating that. So I start my day because I really need to keep myself in a high vibration in order to do my job, which I chose this job. Don't you love how things work out? To force myself, not clearly, I didn't know this, but now looking back, so that I remain in this higher vibration, so that I can help and pass it on to others that, have a little bit more difficulty getting there. But my morning routine is like, I have the nicest soaps, great shampoo, lovely towels. I have my music, going on my phone during that time. So I'm starting the day hot, clean water. Just think of the billions of people that don't even have water. Yeah. We're some of the richest human beings that have ever been on this planet. Yeah. And we don't
What
have
do we got to complain about?
Yeah, exactly. Some of us. I think we forget that.
Yeah.
Just that you can go to your phone and choose any song, that you want to hear. Any song. And it's, within 2 seconds it's playing. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know that the work is an inner process project.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there is also the work that we are doing outside of ourselves as warriors or whatever we want to call ourselves. I mean, I don't know if I really want to get into politics and the economy and stuff, but I do think that it would be good to shed light. We all need to be having a conversation around what is wrong with our economic system. And what do you think is wrong with our economic system?
Oh, it's
the big system.
Well, the big system clearly is the people that have enough to help out, the other people aren't doing it. You know, clearly the tax thing is not fair.
Right.
But I think it's bigger than that. I think that it's a sickness almost to get to, you know, accumulate more and more and more. I mean, how many billions of dollars do you need?
Yeah.
You know, but somewhere inside there's this lack that we're going back to of worth. You know, if you have worth and you know that, you know, and you have faith that this is how things work, you don't need billions of dollars at all.
No.
So one, I think we should really look at that sickness in our society.
Yeah.
You know, that because we do, in a way, think that those people have more worth than the people that are living right now on the streets. And it's just wrong. It's completely wrong. It's broken. Yeah. But we've been sold that, you know, those people on the streets, you know, those drug addicts, and they couldn't hold down a job, and they must be da-da-da-da-da-da-da. They're just like the rest of us. They're just doing the best that they can.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the healing of the planet really is going to come down to how we help each other, you know, and essentially build community, whether it's online or in person.
Right.
So that we are always uplifting one another and reminding each other of each other's worth, because we all have roles to play, you know.
Yeah. Well, what I think I have thought about is compassion. I feel like we've really lost that. I did read this study about certain antidepressants and stuff that somehow block that compassion feeling. I'm not exactly sure how that all works, but I've thought about this. Yeah. You know, because clearly there's an issue. Clearly, if so many people in our society are so miserably unhappy.
Yeah.
I just feel like we've just lost, you know, the compassion for other people and what they're going through. And
I think a lot of that, I think that we are alienated from each other because we have all these judgments about, okay, if you're, like you were saying, if you're that person on the street, you're this way. If you're that person, you're this way. And when that's like this judgment that's at this weird level up here, where like if you really are tapped into your own humanity,
right,
and you actually are getting real with yourself,
right,
how you've fucked up 100,000 times,
then
you can see, oh well, so is everybody else, and and then we're all like equal. We're just human.
I had, and I'll admit it, for a long time, a whole bunch of judginess around people with addiction issues. I didn't understand it. I didn't see it in my family, and I bought into they're weaker, you know, or whatever it is. And now to just see and look at addiction differently and genetically, and then what our society has done with opioid crisis, and you know, it's fascinating to me. I have a girlfriend that broke her ankle, and it was on Friday. So she goes and has the operation, and it's fixed. So they give her, you know, pain pills. On Monday, she's supposed to stop taking the pain pills 4 days. And she's like, I can't stop taking the pain pills. Yeah. So the ankle healed fine. Yeah. But 2 months later, she's still going with withdrawals from the 4 days of pain pills.
Yeah. Gosh, it's powerful.
It's so powerful.
Well, and, you know, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's near and dear to my heart. As I'm about 5 months sober now.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, this has been a really big step for me.
Yeah.
And considering addiction, I really think of it as something that we all experience. I think that the conditioned mind is an addicted mind.
Well, I'll agree with you there.
Yeah. You know, these people who keep acquiring billions of dollars are addicted.
Clearly. Well,
anybody who has any thought that isn't in perfect alignment with their soul is addicted. Therefore, we all are. So have some compassion for,
because we're all in it, just in different things. Let's even looking at Netflix.
Yep. Oh,
you know.
Well, I have to admit, I do.
Well, join the club. Yes, but still, but even recognizing, you know, that these are ways that take us out of being present.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
exactly.
And it's okay.
It is.
It's totally okay. You're an adult, you make a choice, but when it's more harmful to, your life
and what I've heard is, I think it was Russell Brand that expressed this, it's when you can't stop. That's when they really start to define it as an addiction.
Okay.
So you've recognized it, and you're like, shit,
I gotta do something about this.
Yeah, but then I can't. And so then you're like, okay, well, this is a problem,
Yeah.
And then you seek help, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then but the problem is, a lot of people don't see a lot of other things as addictive, as like the spending of money or some people, but yeah, like the accumulation of money is not considered an addiction.
And it should be.
It is.
It is.
Because I do think that some people can't stop.
Well, and we know that they can't stop shopping.
Right.
We know that that's a real thing.
Yes. Right.
And I feel also that that's part of what we were talking about just a couple minutes ago, the bigger issue with the more, the greed, the 1980s, philosophy of, greed is good. Yeah. I know.
Suffering, it's just suffering, right? You're, looking for something else. It's not that.
And I think for those of us that are average, that we like to think of ourselves as average, we look at rich people and we think that they have it all figured out, that their life is free and they don't have money worries or any other, issues. But I've been fortunate enough in my life to be around a lot of extremely rich people. And they still have that. They still have that fear that, oh my God, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and, my money's going to be gone, or, so they don't have that feeling of abundance.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah, which we think that they would.
Yeah. Because
we think money brings that.
Right.
Would that be nice?
So twisted.
I know. I know.
Sounds like Jack wants to come out.
Yeah, he does, but he's fine.
Okay. That's her dog.
Yeah, that's my dog in the other room.
In conclusion, this has been amazing.
Yeah.
Like, we touched on a lot of cool things.
Yeah, it was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad we captured it.
I am too.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to share and see what others have to say.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So.
Because it really is I think that, life doesn't stop. It doesn't stop at one podcast, doesn't stop at one video. This is a touching down in a long conversation, right?
Yeah.
So let's keep it going, you know?
I'm really happy that our society is finally, I think, at a point where we're having these conversations and things are moving forward and we're thinking instead of just buying into what, we've been fed this whole time, that we're making choices. Do I want this? Does it bring joy?
Yeah.
Is this the type of life I want? Does my work and my personal life, do they match? Am I the same person? There's a lot in here.
Yeah, there is.
Juicy
stuff.
I know.
I love it.
We should do another one.
Yes.
Okay. To be continued.